Hi, everyone, and thank you all so much for joining us here today for this Indie Author Project expert session, Getting Book Reviews with Indie expert Brian Schwartz. My name is Emily Gooding, and I'm with the Indie Author Project team. And before I pass it on over to Brian here, I have just a couple quick housekeeping items to get out of the way. Currently, all attendees are muted. This just tends to help with the audio quality on these group webinars. But please feel free to direct any comments and questions at all to the questions box on your GoToWebinar control panel. That will be monitored throughout the session. And we'll have an open Q&A portion at the end of the webinar. Also on that same GoToWebinar control panel, you'll see the presentation that Brian will be sharing is available for download there in the handout section. And then lastly, this session is being recorded, and all registrants will receive a link to that recording just a little bit later on this afternoon. But otherwise, now that we've gotten that out of the way, I'm really excited to introduce today's speaker. After having helped hundreds of authors since 2009, Brian has seen firsthand kind of what works and what doesn't with getting book reviews. So he'll be going over how to get a good book for your review, what to do if you receive a bad review, all the details with Amazon tricks to go for it with getting your reviews there. And similarly, Brian has gone through with his team kind of in the trenches and have personally gathered hundreds of reviews for his clients, so he knows firsthand kind of the ins and outs of this aspect of indie authorship. So Brian, thank you so much for being on here today, and please take it away.
Thank you, Emily. It's great to be here. It's great to have all these great attendees. So I will try to not go too quickly through everything so you guys can grasp as much as you can, but Emily will make this recording available so you can go back through it and watch it again and hopefully absorb more. Since we're all so spread out, I thought I'd just mention where I am because I think it's always interesting. That's the first question I ask when I hear from somebody. But I'm in this little town called Morro Bay. Most people have never heard of it. It's near a bigger town called San Luis Obispo, which is still a very small town. But we're on the Central Coast. We're about 2 hours from the Central Valley, where I think 80% of the produce in the United States is grown. So we get a lot of great fresh produce, but we're halfway between LA and San Francisco. But it's a little rural town right on the coast called, it's got about 10,000 people. So it's a great little slice of heaven, and that's where I'm at. And I won't go into great detail about my background because this talk is really for you guys, but I can share more with you after the talk, or if you ever want to ask me more after this. So that's where I'm at. So since 2009, as Emily mentioned, I've been working in self-publishing full time. I kind of got chewed up and spit out of the corporate world after 2008, like a lot of people. I started a small publishing company, but then quickly found that that was a very difficult way to make a living. And people started asking me for help with their books. And the publishing company was a great experience for me because I learned, I cut my teeth on a lot of this stuff early, but it's really all of the authors that have hired me through the years. And these are just some of the recent titles I helped publish on a work for hire basis. But these are all what you would call independently published or self-published authors. They just come to me to help kind of guide them through the process, which quite honestly has gotten more difficult than ever before. So I don't envy you guys stepping into this for the first time. And I always tell my clients when we move into the marketing phase of working on their books is that marketing is an effort, sales is a result. We can control the effort, but not the result, because we can't force somebody to buy something. But great results tend to follow great effort. And it's all about doing the right things to increase the odds that somebody will go ahead and make a purchase of your book or whatever you're selling. So I wanted to share with you kind of the blueprint, the model that we've refined over many years, and we kind of keep coming back to this. This is a structure that just works. And if you want to kind of understand my methodology and my approach, this is what it is. So I'll get into more of these into more detail a little bit, but ARC is an advanced reader copy. I'm going to be talking about that, or the bound galley. We also set it up for Kindle right away so that you have real estate on Amazon for reviews, and you can learn a little bit about how that all works. Then we start reaching out to reviewers. And we make sure that your presence is optimized for on Amazon and Goodreads and anywhere else where your audience is. And during those first 3 steps, if the author wants to seek a traditional publisher, we will do the outreach during this time. In fact, getting those reviews into your book proposal is extremely helpful because agents that'll set you apart if you've gotten reviews from other people when you submit your book proposal. And then if it looks like the author wants to proceed with self-publishing, which many do, ultimately, they just want to get the books out there, we'll set up print on demand and get you on the major marketplaces, and then we'll wrap that up with a KDP bestseller campaign, which is getting you on the Amazon bestseller page is not as difficult as it once was, but you have to do some prep work in order to get you set up. The way I manage all of this, I really couldn't do it without this tool that we developed. It's based on some open source software, but we really had it customized and fine-tuned for book publishing. And everything is in one place. It's a secure room for each client, each project. You can have multiple people, members of the team have secure access to this, but essentially it tracks milestones, gives you a visual timeline. It's a very collaborative, secure approach to having notes shared, things that you might need in the future that you don't want to lose. You essentially can get back up to speed on your project very quickly with this, with a tool like this, without having to dig through a bunch of emails or files, trying to kind of remember where you left off. This is a really helpful tool because it shows who has the ball, where did we leave off, and it's all milestone driven. So these are just, I wouldn't be able to do what I do without this tool, and I'm so dependent on. I've been using it since 2016. All right, so here's the steps we go through when we do a reviewer outreach. Now, whether or not you hire us or not, I want to walk you through the process that we go through and that we've really been kind of fine-tuning and going through a lot of trial and error to get to where we're at and to get good results. So the first thing we do is we build a list of potential reviewers, and that's typically based on a list of comp titles. So that's competitive titles to yours that the same audience or reader would likely be interested in. And you've got to be able to find other books that your readers are also reading. And if you can't, that's a problem. There's got to be other books that people have read that are similar to yours. And you may have to do some digging on Amazon. And I know that not all authors are readers, so that might take a little bit of work up front. Then we set up a review request form, and every time you send a review copy, you must fill out a form so you know who requested a copy and when it was sent to them. Even if you fill this out for them, it's critical that you've got some sort of a process of capturing every single request. Don't just send out books to people without keeping really diligent notes of when you sent it and who you sent it to. Then we fulfill those requests. I'm going to show you this cool trick that you can use with Amazon Prime to send those books at an extremely low cost, much lower than you probably thought. Or you can provide them a PDF, which is certainly fine in my mind these days. A lot of people are accustomed to getting those, but I know that a lot of authors don't want to do that. So you can use Kindle instead, and I'll talk about that. A shout out to a great company that I've been working with for I think over 7 years now, but Snowfall Press, they're a great partner for sending out advanced reader copies. You don't need an ISBN to set up a book there. And then lastly, if you're fortunate to have your book on audio format, you can send Audible codes and give reviewers that option as well. Step 4 is we update the tracker when the book was sent, and then we follow up with them, typically 60 and 90 days out. We ask them to remind them and give them a little nudge, ask them if they've had a chance to read the book. At this point, we do get feedback sometimes from people that say, I didn't care for this book, so I didn't want to leave a bad review, so I put the book down, I'm not reading it. In that case, of course, we don't want to push them for review. Then once we've done all that, we'll run a bestseller campaign, and we have a 99.9% success rate at getting our authors up on the bestseller charts for at least a couple of days so you can get those awesome screenshots. So if you have the luxury, and I know that this is beyond where most authors are beyond this point, so it's too late, but consider this for your next book and maybe a second edition. Start with a bound galley or advanced reader copy. So one of my clients, Doug, he's kind of following this process perfectly. He's been spending the last 6 months gathering reviews, sending out review copies. We haven't actually published the book yet. It is available on Amazon only on Kindle, and you'll see if you go to his page that it's really just there for people to post reviews. We are sending out query letters to agents and publishers. In fact, we've sent out over 50. We're using those early reviews in his query letter, and gonna keep pushing to try to get this traditionally published because it's it's a book that's timely and we think would be interested to a publisher. Any books that we do that we have physical copies that we need to send out, we use Snowfall Press because there's no ISBN number associated with it, which actually I forgot to mention, that can benefit you because what happens is when you start sending out lots of review copies, those books may wind up for sale on Amazon as used copies. Well, if you send them an ARC with no barcode on the back, they can't sell those books as easily because Amazon requires that it's got a barcode on the back for them to use. So most Amazon sellers are not going to be savvy enough to know how to go through that, or at least want to hassle with the process of adding an ISBN number on the back. So Snowfall Press allows you to have sort of a safe way to send out books that aren't going to necessarily wind back up on the used book market competing against yourself. Why I'm a big fan of starting with Kindle, and I think a lot of authors kind of don't do this, but it's very important. And I'm seeing that publishers are doing it more and more. You'll come across books sometimes that are recently published by a major author and they're not yet available in print and they're not really getting promoted because the publishers are kind of fine tuning and I think going through this process as well. So if you've never published on Amazon before, Kindle gives you that option to sort of get on the field and start knowing kind of how this whole thing works. So I just highlighted some things here that we look at after we've gotten the book up on Amazon. One, we can test the cover. Is the cover drawing people in? The title, is the title the right title? Because oftentimes you'll find out that you picked a title that the results that are coming up are not what you expected. And you can then tweak the title and things like that. You're basically in Kindle, it's completely fluid. You can continue to make changes as much as you want. The description, does it come out the way you want? Are you in the right categories, for example? These are categories from another book, but I just highlighted them because you'll get to see how Amazon is sort of classifying your book. And if it's not correct, then you can contact Amazon KDP and have them correct that. You can give Kindle gifts to other readers. That's a secure way to deliver a digital copy of your book. That's number 4. Number 5, people can add the books to their wish lists, which helps your overall ranking and exposure on Amazon. And then there's experimental features, which Amazon is always offering, adding and pulling down, like these book clubs. This is a relatively new program they've offered. But you can do, if you know much about internet marketing, they do this thing called A/B testing, where they'll basically take 2 web pages for the same product and they'll use different words and pictures and kind of see what responses and how many clicks and what the responses are. So you can do that sort of the same way here using this. I also want to make a good analogy, stepping back, is the difference between a soft opening and a hard opening. So or a grand opening. So when you have a new business in town, it typically has a period of a soft opening where they've opened their doors, but they haven't really told the world. They've invited friends and family and people to come in and sort of kick the tires, make sure that everything's working the way it should be working before they make this grand announcement, a grand opening, and bring the whole world in. Well, think about your Kindle book in the same way, where it's your sort of opportunity to have a soft opening, work out the kinks, find out if there's any issues before you do your grand opening. Okay, Goodreads. So this is a huge part of what we do. And if you're not familiar with Goodreads yet, I strongly encourage you to start getting into it. It's huge. It's got 90 million subscribers and members. There's over 100 million reviews on Goodreads. The beautiful thing about Goodreads, it's a great place for people to post a review, and it doesn't matter their connection to you, whether or not they purchased the book. Anyone can post a review on Goodreads. They just have to have a Goodreads account. But in order for you to have a page on Goodreads, you have to have a book up on Amazon, and Kindle will suffice. So you can, we just set this page up for Doug, and he's now a Goodreads author. They give you some options. He can start interacting with readers. There's actually like comments, and as you can see, I posted a review for his book, which I could never do on Amazon because of my connection with him, but I am able to do it on Goodreads. And you can take these reviews and use them on your Amazon page via Author Central. So again, if you're not familiar with all of this yet, you will become more familiar with it. But Author Central is how you go in and add what are called editorial reviews to your Amazon page, and I can give you a link to more information about that. Yeah, I've got some more things to say about Goodreads, but let me come back to that if I can get through all my material, and we'll touch on those again. Okay, so this is an important kind of distinction of something we've learned. So here's just randomly grab somebody's profile on Goodreads. So each reviewer has a profile, and I wanted to call your attention to a couple things. So is this someone we should reach out to? Say we came across this guy as someone who wrote a review for a book that's similar. In fact, The Alchemist is a good example of a book that we recently helped someone publish that has kind of that same audience. So he may have popped up on our radar as a potential reviewer, but what we do is we click on his profile and we look at it and we see, oh, his average review is only 3.35 stars. That's out of 5. And that's a little bit of a red flag because he's a little bit harsh with books. And if you look at, you can then click on his reviews and see all the reviews he's left. And if you notice here, 1 star for The Shack, right? That's a really well-known book. 3 stars, 3 stars, 2 stars. Here's one that's 4 stars, but he predominantly gives well-known books low ratings. So it might be a big mistake to send him a review copy, to invite him to be a reviewer based on his past reviews. So it's really important that you vet the people that you're sending books to, because what I've found is, in fact, let me go back to this page for a second. When you do get involved in Goodreads and you learn more about it, you're going to start finding these groups on Goodreads that are specifically for like ARCs. So authors can go there and offer their book to the group, and there may be hundreds or thousands of members in the group. You know, we did that early on, and it proved not to be very successful because you're not vetting the people who are requesting your book. You're getting a lot of what I would call drive-bys, people just looking for free stuff. They may not be your ideal reader. And what happens is if somebody gets your book who's really not interested in the topic, they're going to write a really short review, maybe 1 or 2 lines. They may even grab the review from the description of the book. I'm sure you've seen that. And you sort of just wasted a review copy with someone who isn't the right reader. So rather than put your book out there to anyone who wants to review it, we found it you're far more successful when you direct your attention towards people that you want to review it, who you know are interested in the topic to begin with. All right, finding reviewers. So this is something that I wanted to bring up and give you some ideas. So one of my most successful clients is Brenda Bernstein, and she wrote the book, How to Write a Killer LinkedIn Profile. And her first year of publishing her book, I think it was back in 2013, she set a goal to ask 10 people a week to review her book. Well, that was for the first year of the book. And out of those 10 people that she asked, typically 1 to 2 people would say yes. And of those 50, she would send out, and these were people that was tied to her business. Her book is closely tied to her business. So these were people who were already interested in the topic. So when she offered a review copy, she had a pretty good odds of them saying yes. At the end of that first year, she had over 50 reviews, because 52 weeks a year, 52 weeks in a year. And she also had about 50 reviews that came in organically that she didn't go after. So year 1, she had over 100 reviews for her book. And that was most of the work that she had to do. From that point forward, she didn't have to do make a lot of effort into it, although I think she still asked for reviews, but not anywhere near the attention that she had to give it the first year. And that set her to be successful from this point forward, because Amazon does look at the reviews, the number of reviews that you get that come in organically over a period of time is far more natural than getting a whole bunch of reviews popping in at the same time. In fact, if you're say you're a college instructor and you have 100 students and you give them an assignment 1 week, listen, I want you to read my book and post a review on Amazon. They come back to class and they say, okay, I'm going to do this. They all post reviews and they all might go up for a minute, but then all of a sudden you go back to your page and all the reviews are gone. Well, what happened is Amazon saw that as a very unnatural occurrence, that you would get all these reviews in a very short period of time. They all came from the same IP address, which meant they were all in the same room. And your account is going to be flagged as a problem account, and you may even get your account banned from any reviews coming in. In fact, we saw that happen recently. I have a screenshot of it, but I don't think I have it in this presentation. So just a lesson learned about what not to do. Okay, so I just scratch down some ideas. Essentially, how do you find book reviewers? Okay, Facebook and LinkedIn, you know, your network's there. Those people are already online, pretty easy for you to reach out to 10 per week in those networks. But think about influencers like teachers. You know, I'm thinking of my yoga teacher. If I wrote a book that would be interesting to her, then I would definitely ask her, and also tell her that if she wanted to offer it up to any of her students, that I'd be happy to honor that request. So you can quickly multiply your success if you reach out to people who I would consider like power influencers. But also community leaders, go back to your coworkers, previous coworkers, other authors. Now, I know that if you don't know this already, but other authors can't write reviews for you on Amazon. That's a big no-no. In fact, it'll be automatically and instantly pulled down if they try to do that. And if you've written a review for them, it'll be pulled down. So you don't want to cancel each other out, but you can reuse those reviews through Author Central, basically adding the editorial review. You can add those to your marketing material and the front matter of your book. So it's still valuable to get reviews from other authors. And then think about associations that you might be involved with, Elks Lodge, you know, Rotary, all the different associations that you might be. And then what we do is we give authors these cards. We don't always do this, but you essentially can give them a card, and if somebody's interested, say, you know, great, I'd like to, you know, send you a book. You don't have to carry books around. You can just have them snap this QR code. They fill out a form with their mailing address. We get notified, and all of a sudden, you know, a couple days later, they get a book in the mail, and we've tracked who that book went to. Here's a old map that I've used. This is in your PDF, so don't feel like you got to furiously write all these down, but just to sort of remind you of all the people that you directly and indirectly have contact with that you could ask if they'd review your book. It's a pretty extensive list. I think you could come up, you know, in a couple hours, easily come up with a list of 100 people. And some kind of creative ways to think about this too. Think about who you invited to your wedding. Like that wedding list could be a good list of people to reach out to. Consider who you'd invite to your funeral. Well, if these people aren't willing to give you a review, you know, if they're willing to come to your funeral, there's a good chance they're willing to probably give you a book review as well. So just, you know people, trust me. All right, so this is an interesting slide. Don't want to rush through, so we'll talk a little bit about it, is the budget that you need to plan for and the return on investment. That's what the ROI means. So let's say you reach out to 100 potential reviewers. Of those 100 reviewers, our estimate, not people that you know personally, but these are people that we reach out on Goodreads, typically 30% will honor our request to be a reviewer and request a copy of your book. Of those 30 people, typically 50% of them will write you a review. You may get more if it's a really good, you know, if the book really resonates with people, but typically you'll get at least 50%. And I know the more we follow up with them, the more likely it is that they will post a review. But we also get some of these folks, you know, best intentions, they just don't follow through and post a review. So you can't expect that all 30 will be giving you reviews. I'll show you how that cost to send a review copy for $5 is achievable. So let's say you basically budget $150 to send out 30 review copies. If you get 15 reviews from that $150, that means that you've basically paid $10 per review, which in the grand scheme of what it costs to market things is an amazingly low priced vehicle for marketing. Now, let's say you're making a $5 book from $5 profit per book. My sort of unscientific analysis is that one review on a book nets out to 10 sales of that book over the life of the book. So one review that you get, you can count on that you'll probably get 10 sales as a result of that review. The more reviews that you have, the more books you're going to sell. So let's say you get 10 sales from that review. That means that you've made $40, right? Because you had to pay $10 to, $10 for the cost of the review. It works out to a nice profit for that review. So you should really see the value in getting a review and making that investment in a review copy for somebody. And I just mentioned here, $5, I'm assuming $5 for books, zero for a PDF if you send to people, and then 70 cents if you send them a Kindle. And that's because if you price your Kindle book at 99 cents, that Amazon charges you 70 cents. So basically you get 30 cents back in royalty. I can come back to this if there's any questions. All right, got a bad review. Remember the 80-20 rule, and there's actually this cool book. I have a copy of this. Is essentially examples of horrible reviews for really well-known successful books that people wrote. But if a book has only 5-star reviews, buyers are just naturally suspicious about those reviews. I kind of glance through all of the 1- and 2-line reviews that I see because I just know that those are planted by review services that go out and do this. And this is more for other products, not necessarily books as much. But if you can aim to get 80% of your reviews being good versus 20% are bad, you're still doing very well. But here's something even more important is why a bad review can be good. Because a bad review that's well written can help you target the right reader. So the worst thing you want to do is misrepresent your book and get your book in the hands of the wrong reader, because you're going to get more bad reviews. So make sure you take a close look at the reviews you do get that are negative, not necessarily what you expected, and ask yourself, are you, misrepresenting the book somehow? Because I've seen lots of good marketers with lots of bad reviews on their books because they totally oversold what the book's going to provide. But if it steers the wrong reader away from your book, then it's actually done a service and helped you avoid getting your book in the hands of the wrong reader. And this is why Amazon is a big proponent of, leaving those bad reviews up, because it helps prevent returns, which cost them a lot of money. Okay, how to ask for a review. It really comes back to something I mentioned earlier, and that's that you want to make sure you're asking the right reader. So why should I be interested in your book? Is it related to my business? Have I read similar books? Do I like the story? Try to identify where your readers are, and that's how you get good reviews. If you just blindly send books to anyone or offer them up on these review services that make your book available to the masses, you run the risk of getting your book in the hands of the wrong reader. And also, don't just blindly send out books to people expecting that they're going to take the time to review your book just because you've sent them a copy. That's kind of rude in some extent, because you're asking them for their time. It may not asking them to pay for it, but you're still asking them for their time with it, which is worth something. All right, so here's an example of a letter that we use when we reach out to reviewers. So thank you for the review you posted for blank. So you immediately get their attention because you've already done your research and you know that they've read a similar book. We have a similar title we think you enjoy. And if you're on Goodreads, you can actually insert a link to your book on Goodreads, which you should do. If you're willing to post an honest review for it, I'd like to offer you a complimentary review copy. All we ask in return is that you post an honest review within 90 days. Now, this is a very important line we've added recently. If you determine that this title is not a good fit for you, no need to finish it and do not feel obligated to post a review. In some cases, reviewers were feeling obligated to post a review, even if it wasn't a good review, because we sent them a book. Now we're giving them an out here that if they don't like the book, they can put it down and they don't need to trudge through it just to give us a review because they feel obligated to do so. So we want to make sure we've had that, and that's, I think, helping us avoid getting some negative reviews. Simply reply to this note with your email address, preferred format, email address so we can follow up, and then what format they want it in. And then I put this little PS, which actually this is new. This falls under the idea versus implementation piece, but my goal is to find at least 100 reviewers. So if you know anybody else you'd think be interested, let me know, and I'd be happy to send them a copy as well. Because people want to help you reach your goal, and it's a good thing to ask if you're struggling to try to get reviewers at the very end. I used to do this when I was interviewing people. I'd ask them, is there anyone else you think I should interview? And I always got a few names. This is what we send on Goodreads. Now, a couple cautions that I really want to make clear and sure you understand is if you're contacting book reviewers through Goodreads, do not reach out to more than 10 per week. If you're reaching out to too many Goodreads members, you're going to get flagged as a spammer, and you don't want to get your account closed. That's not a good thing, especially if you're a Goodreads author. So don't push the limit as far as how many. It's the same thing at LinkedIn, at Facebook. If you contact too many people at the same time on LinkedIn, you're going to get flagged. If you contact if you send out too many friend requests on Facebook, you're going to get flagged. So just understand that you're acting like a spammer when you're overdoing it. 2, don't do anything to drive them off of the Goodreads website, because Goodreads doesn't appreciate that when you're trying to pull them. They think you're trying to steal their membership from Goodreads to somewhere else. So whenever there's an external link, first of all, a lot of people won't click on those external links anyway, because they don't know where it's going. But 2, it raises the red flag that, again, you might be spamming other Goodreads members. They're not saying that you can't reach out and contact book reviewers. They're just don't want you to abuse this system that they've set up. So the reviewer request form is really gold for us. It gives people the opportunity, 1, to preview the book. So it would be great if everybody would read the first couple of chapters of a book before they read it or before they requested a copy. That's not always going to happen, but you can certainly ask them to do that. But you can capture what do they want, what format do they want it in. And the cool thing about this request form is it automatically populates a Google Sheet. So all the information is organized for us, which allows us to track the costs of each copy. When the review was posted, we actually go back and look at that. And when we sent them the book so that we can follow up if they haven't posted a review. So it's all organized for us in Google Sheets. And it's so valuable because Google Sheets can be shared with a team. You don't have to do this all yourself. So the form is really gold for us. All right, so here's a little trick I shared with Emily, and I think this is just an amazing opportunity for us right now. So this is the book right now. You can go to Amazon and you'll find it for $4.48. And you're like, wow, why is it so cheap? Well, the cost to print this book through KDP is $2.69. So if you were to buy author copies directly from the bookshelf, that's what you would pay, but you have to pay shipping. You can't get prime shipping when you buy books from KDP. They're going to charge you shipping, and it depends how many books you order is what they're going to charge you. Plus, they're extremely slow. Typically, it takes 2+ weeks to get books. But if you set the price at the lowest price that they'll allow you to set, in this case, $4.48, because Amazon has to cover their markup, that's going to be 0 royalty for the author. But all the books that we order are shipped via Amazon Prime, typically get to the reviewer within 2 days. And you just do this for the first 30 or 60 days while you're doing this kind of outreach effort. It's been, it's the soft opening I told you about. You're not driving tons of traffic, but you've got a place for people to post reviews. And that fulfillment model is just mind-boggling that you can do this. I mean, to ship in 2 days. So the beauty of Amazon Prime is, you as an author can now take advantage of what they've built and the efficiencies in the system. So I think that's a game changer. All right, final thoughts and ideas, kind of things I want to now have time to go back and not rush through things a little bit. The grand opening versus the soft opening, hopefully that concept makes sense to you guys, kind of the benefits of doing an advanced reader copy. It's a good idea just to always ask for reviews anywhere you can. In the book itself, a lot of authors don't do this, but you can at the back of the book saying, I hope you enjoyed this book. Would you mind, if you'd go back and leave a review, I'd be very grateful for that. If you've missed the whole advanced reader copy process, like you're beyond that, you can always go back and do a second edition and sort of reset yourself and even get a whole new listing on Amazon with a new ISBN number and, start with a clean slate. I want to share that, my experience is that books that are newer tend to rank higher than books that are older. And the longer a book's been up on Amazon, the harder it is to find. That's not by accident. It's because Amazon knows what books are selling well. So the call to action, sort of what do I want you to do after all this is said and done. And if you want to work with me on all this stuff, I offer 2 models, a do-it-yourself option and then a full service option where we do pretty much everything for you, but there's a lot of work up front that we do together to make sure we're dialing this in. And those are the 2 options, and there's a link to my website there, a page where I go into more detail. These are the properties I've got, my contact information. I'm in California. If you're out of the country, we've done promotions for other authors outside the country, and we can always talk via Skype or WhatsApp. And I do have a Facebook page. And oh, the bonus. So in the description, I mentioned a bonus about how reviews can help increase your profit margin. So as I mentioned, Brenda is one of our more successful clients, and we were doing some testing on the pricing of her book, and we dropped the price, and we noticed that the sales remained the same. We increased the price, and the sales remain the same. Now, in a Kindle edition, you don't want to go over $9.99 because then you get a lower royalty. But the point is, when you have so many reviews for your book, and in this case, she's got 566 ratings today, the price is not as much of a factor as it is when you don't have a lot of reviews. In fact, authors ask me, what should I price my book at? I said, well, it depends how many reviews you have, because if you have no reviews, you shouldn't be charging $9.99 for your book unless there's something extremely valuable in there that people understand justifies that price. The more reviews you get, the higher the price you can charge. And at some point, you hit that point where price is no longer an issue. The reviews speak for themselves, and the book can justify that. If you've bought products on Amazon, you probably noticed that oftentimes the sellers will put these little cards in the product that say, hey, we'd love a review. You can do the same thing kind of in the back of your book, so on a separate page. You're not supposed to provide any monetary compensation to reviewers, but you can offer to reimburse the purchase price of the book. Now, we don't really do that anymore because it didn't really prove to be an effective, just people didn't take advantage of it, but you may want to consider that for review copies, if somebody does buy the book and they are willing to post a review, that you will reimburse them for the price of the book, because that is allowed by Amazon. And then this is just an example of creative ways you can take advantage of that soft opening kind of limited time offers. But I can go back and touch on anything further at this point. Emily, I didn't want to.
No, I think that was
everybody with too much information.
I think all of that information was definitely very necessary information, and I'm sure it could be probably 2 more hours of equally valuable information as well. This is a topic that we've had so many requests for presentations on, so we're so thrilled that you were able to be here today. And as such, we've had a bunch of questions coming through for you. If you don't mind, we can dive on into that Q&A portion.
Let's do it.
For all of our attendees, please continue to share any additional follow-ups or questions you may have in that same questions box. We will definitely try to get to everything here. So to start things off, and I'm sure you might have seen this question coming, but do you have any thoughts on paid reviews, their value or lack thereof? And if so, are there any?
So like Kirkus Reviews is the best known one out there, right? It's like $450 and you get a review, and you are asking somebody to read your book. They tend to be good reviewers. They're not always stellar, but that's great sales copy for you to use in your description and your marketing materials. So oftentimes authors they struggle with the description block on Amazon. They can't sell their book. They don't speak the language that marketers speak. So what you can do is use those reviews that you get and take snippets out of there, because those are the best marketing messages you can get. So what I've seen from Kirkus, I would say if you've got the budget, it's worthwhile, because what you get back from them is excellent sales copy that you can use on your author page. They can't put that on Amazon themselves, but you can put it on your author page. You can use it on your website. It does lend itself to credibility. You just have to be sure that your book is up to par, because they'll be brutally honest, and you're being compared against authors who are very experienced and very good. So do not send them a book that you're not 100% confident is going to stand up against other books that they get, because you'll get a bad review. And you might be able to they typically try to say 1 or 2 good things about the review or about the book regardless, and you might be able to use those, but that's a lot of money to spend for something you can only use a little snippet of.
And in terms of these different paid review sources, are there ones that you'd recommend steering clear of, or ones you'd recommend kind of leaning towards? And specifically, we have some questions about reader's favorite, like a reader's favorite 5-star review versus, of course, like a PW starred review.
The vast majority of them, in my mind, are not worthwhile. I think reader's favorite's one of those ones that fall under it. There's one, something Authors Club. I mean, we've tried a lot of them. Basically, if they're cheap, if they're like $20, $30, you get what you pay for. And There's a couple of flat out scams out there that are just ridiculous. So I would say the vast majority of them, no. If you can point to specific authors who've used them and they can provide you with testimonials or examples of books recently that they've reviewed, but there's a lot of scams out there. So I would tell you that stick with the main ones. I think Blue Ink Review has been around for a long time, and Kirkus Review has been around for a long time. Otherwise, you know, if you can get, I would put that money towards sending out 100 review copies, because we've gotten some extremely good reviews from some of the reviewers we've contacted. So they got like a Kirkus quality review from a reviewer that we contacted or that you contact. So I would instead, be honest with you, now that I think about it a little more, I would shift that $450 to sending out more review copies to people that get those reviews on Amazon, because you're going to get some gold when you do that.
That question in particular, so that we had quite a few attendees ask about during this session. I know it's also come up in previous sessions, so that's so great that you're able to speak to that a bit more. We're having quite a few follow-up questions come through here, so thank you so much to our attendees also for being so engaged.
And also the review services, Emily, that are instantly available to provide you a review are red flag. A good review service is going to have a backlog of typically 3 to 6 months before they can get your review to you. That's legitimate. If they're immediately available and they're going to get a review for you in 2 weeks, that's a red flag.
That's a great piece of advice to keep in mind there, to be able to kind of weed out the more legitimate from those that might be a bit more in it for the financial side on their end. And we have also quite a few more specific questions here, if you don't mind getting into the nitty gritty a bit more.
Sure.
Do you have any insight on using Goodreads giveaways to get reviews? Or is that something that you're familiar with?
And we've done a lot of those unsuccessfully. So it goes back to what I told you was, if you're going to offer your book to anyone, you're going to get some really interesting responses from anybody that can read your book, right? You're not vetting your reviewers. We've been far more successful in addressing, going after reviewers who've specifically requested, read similar books, and we contact them directly. So it's more of a outbound marketing as opposed to putting it out there and waiting for inbound inquiries to come. So yeah, we've done several Goodreads giveaways, and it helps a little bit get your exposure improved on Goodreads. I wouldn't say it's completely worthless. I think it's worthwhile, but it's like $100 or $120 now. It used to be $35 back in the beginning, if anybody remembers those days, or $25. So they really jacked up the price a couple years ago. But yeah, I would kind of give it a 50-50 answer, I'm afraid.
In terms of, sorry, I think we have a slight echo there, sorry about that. With these reviews for specific platforms like Goodreads, as you mentioned, I know you talked a little bit more about the Amazon side of things with the book clubs and everything, wanting to make sure you're not providing your book for reviews from readers who aren't necessarily interested in that genre or have previously left a lot of negative reviews. Do you have any experience with doing things like online book tours, kind of pre-launch to promote and garner new reviews for a new release?
I don't. I know that there are companies and individuals out there that do them. They're not very expensive. I think it's worth a shot. It's going to give you more exposure and more links on Google. I think what you need to look at are the websites that you're getting mentioned on have any ranking at all and are helping you. Typically on Google, the book that's going to pop up first is the link that's going to pop up first is the Amazon paid spot. So they actually pay to get their listings coming up first. And you know that most people are going to click on those first couple links. So I think you want your own website and you want to be on Amazon. Goodreads has a lot of credibility. So does LinkedIn. You can have a page on Facebook for free. Hit the major social networks. I didn't go into detail here, but this Q is for Quora. I would recommend investing some time learning more about Quora, but social media sites tend to rank much higher than a lot of those little individual kind of review blogs, which again, if you peel the onion and you see that this is just a money maker for whoever's selling you the service, you have to just put your guard up.
And with these reviews, especially with, of course, these different online platforms that you just mentioned, when you're requesting for someone to provide a review, we have a specific question here from one of our attendees asking, where do you tell them specifically where to post that review?
Yeah.
Can you say on Amazon or Goodreads, or do you tend to leave it up to them?
No, you definitely want to give them the links to point to. I mentioned that reviewer form was gold. So if you look here, we've got links directly to Goodreads, Amazon, and they can also submit it to us if they want to. If they don't have an account at Goodreads or Amazon, and certainly there's going to be some reviewers who don't, you give them a form, you give them an email address so that they can send you their review and you can post that for them. But you want to actually, you definitely want to give them the links to where they can post reviews for you and make it really easy for them. One click. Don't make them go find how to do it. You're going to lose them. Make this as easy as possible for them to give you a review.
That's definitely really
and one
helpful.
thing as a follow-up, Emily, this came up my last talk. As far as permission goes to use those reviews, when they fill out the form, one of the things that we put on there is that by them submitting their review, they are also giving us permission to use that review in our marketing material or in the book itself. Now, the cool thing about it is if somebody's review winds up in the front matter of your book and you let them know, they're going to be very proud of that, and there's a good chance that they're going to share that with other people. It's like being an extra in a movie. All of a sudden, you're telling everybody, hey, I got mentioned in a book, and oh, what's the book? And I wrote a review, and they put it in the book itself. It's kind of like when you get the, you mention people in the front matter, but they'll feel this sense of ownership, and they're really going to be excited to be part of the project. So you just mentioned that up front, that that disclaimer that you're giving us permission to use your review.
And I'm so glad you brought that up, because it actually brings us right into the follow-up question for that, in terms of leveraging these reviews as marketing resources. How do you recommend kind of discerning what reviews you necessarily, or what snippets you include on your actual book jacket, in any of your front matter, what have you? Do you go for the most glowing reviews or the bigger name? Or do you have any insight there?
Well, certainly if you do have a notable person leaving a review, I think you want to drop their name. I mean, I've seen some pretty, questionable tactics by authors. They'll put a quote on the front of the book by a famous person, like who's alive, like someone like Seth Godin. It's something that Seth Godin said, but because readers are lazy, they're going to be like, oh, Seth Godin, endorsed this book. So there's a lot of BS out there. So you don't want to bullshit your way. At the end of the day, if the book's not good, it doesn't matter what sort of spammy stuff you do, black hat kind of marketing you do, it's not going to be successful. But you'll know when you get that review that really resonates with you, whether it's one or two lines from the review, you're going to know that, oh my gosh, I definitely want to put that on the back of the book, type of thing.
And beyond, of course, utilizing these reviews on things like the book jacket, your Amazon description, I know you already went into this a bit during your presentation, but could you go into a bit more detail there? Other ways to, again, leverage these reviews for marketing purposes to continue to generate sales?
To generate sales, that's a good point. Depends what you're selling. So if you're seeking speaking engagements, with a lot of authors actually wind up doing, or coaching and doing things related to whatever your topic is, you can use those endorsements for that marketing material. You're kind of getting testimonials like you would on LinkedIn or Facebook, and you're able to use those to basically endorse your character as an individual. A lot of times what we'll do is an author will come to me with a new book, they've written another book, and we can put in the front of the book praise for the author's name. So praise for Elena Zucker. She can take snippets from reviews from her other books and put that up front, and she's essentially able to reuse the review she got once over and over again. And I see authors do that all the time. It's very smart.
That's great. Kind of reviews for your own author brand as a whole, rather than a specific book.
That's a good way to look at it, yes.
We're still having a ton of questions come through here, which is so great. So apologies for bouncing around to a couple different topics here. Please bear with me. Going back to platform-specific questions here, some of our attendees are mentioning they have a lot of reviews on one specific platform, but then are kind of lacking on other platforms, like having a lot of reviews on Goodreads, but very few to none on Amazon. Do you recommend they go and ask those people who have left reviews on their other platforms, kind of do the same elsewhere? Or when you're going to...
Amazon is definitely where the reviews turn into money, right? This is where you want to have your reviews. I would say that this is one of the reasons to really concentrate your efforts on one marketplace. I know an author who's got tons of reviews on Barnes & Noble because he just spent a ton of time there, but his books aren't selling at all. Barnes & Noble has just become such a small player. So definitely redirect people back to your Amazon page. If you get a great review and you notice they haven't posted on Amazon, you say, thank you, thank you, thank you. But if here's a link to my Amazon page, it would mean the world to me if you went to post this on Amazon for me. So I definitely would redirect people back to this page. You run the risk that Amazon will take the review down because they have ways. That's going to
be the follow-up question there.
Yeah, they do have ways of finding out how you are connected to other people. If you've ever logged in to your phone from their house and gone to Amazon, your IP address now is forever linked to their IP address, and that's one of the ways they know that you have a personal connection with them. They've got their hands in so much, you guys. I think that, Amazon, if you're on the internet, Amazon knows where you're going. And they know if you're going, they just draw these connections, using technology that they know who knows who. So those tend to be pulled down, in which case, in the perfect scenario, they would send you the review and you can use that yourself on your Amazon author page, using the Author Central to get your editorial review. And just know that potentially some of your reviews are going to get pulled down, but if you remember that I told you, Amazon likes to see reviews come in organically. So there's a percentage of reviews per sales that they kind of use. And again, I'm just speculating, but this is based on years of experience, is that if you've had 100 sales, they might know that from 100 sales, you would get 10 reviews. But if you've had 10 sales and you've had 10 reviews, that raises a red flag. Again, I'm just speculating based on our experience. In that case, your account is flagged. Somebody's looking at those reviews, and there's a good chance those reviews are going to get pulled down. So my point is, do this organically. There's a reason why we do it over 6 months. You can't make all this happen in 30 days. You try to force this, you're going to draw the wrong kind of attention to your book and yourself. And again, organic is the nature. And I tell people all the time, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And well, you'd love to have 100 reviews the book the day is published, unless you did the 6 to 12 months of recruiting reviewers before the book was published. That's not going to happen.
And I'm so glad that you mentioned that there at the end in terms of the amount of time recruiting reviews before your actual release day. But I know you spoke a lot about this during your presentation. But if you wouldn't mind going into rehashing or going into a bit more detail on that in terms of the timeline of your providing ARCs to people for reviews versus the actual kind of publishing day, that'd be great.
So we typically, if you are to work with us to do a reviewer outreach, let me see. Well, this isn't exactly aligned with it, but once we've gotten through phase 1, the book's set up and we have it on Kindle, the reviewer outreach essentially occurs over 3 months. So we reach out to 120 reviewers, and that's 40 reviewers. So 10 reviewers a week, so 40 reviewers a month gets you to 120 reviewers in 3 months. Month 4, we do the follow-up with the folks who haven't left reviews yet. So month 2, 3, 4, and then 5, we do the follow-up, and then month 6, we do a bestseller campaign. This is paid promotions where we drive a lot of traffic to your Amazon page to get downloads during it. So the time frame is 3 to 6 months after you have your advanced copy, or at least your book is published, to do that organic kind of build of reviewers. Does that help?
Definitely. I think that kind of hit it right on the nose with what our attendees were asking for there. And we actually had a very interesting follow-up question to this. I'm kind of curious to hear your response as well. Does the same advice apply to the release of audiobooks as well?
Audiobooks typically come a little bit later, but it can take 30 to 60 days. Well, it can take quite a while to get an audiobook produced, because even after you've gone through the process and submitted it to Audible, it can take them 30 to 60 days to review and approve it. But once you get the book published, you'll get 25 codes from Audible that you can then provide to book reviewers. It's a different audience. I will say that on Audible, anybody can post a review. They don't have the same sort of hardcore rules like Amazon does. So that's also another place. But the one rule they do have is that the reviewer absolutely has to have listened to the audio program. They can't leave a review unless they've actually listened to it. And because Amazon knows how much of anything you've listened to, or even in the case of Kindle, how many pages you've read, don't ask them to leave a review unless they've actually paged through the book on Kindle or listened to the audiobook, because they're going to get flagged of, why is this person writing a review who hasn't actually listened to it? But it is different because it's a different audience.
And that tracking is done platform specifically. So if you happen to have read the book separately and then went to leave a review on.
That's a good, yeah. Again, if you're leaving a review for the audiobook, that's a different format. So you may be mentioning something about the narrator. It's a different experience. So yes, those are different. And if you've got your tribe of hardcore friends who are doing that, then and want to help you out in all the places that they can, do that. But I don't think that the reviews on Audible, well, I take it back. If you're an Audible member, I think that the reviews on Audible are very important.
And with these reviews, again, I know you might believe you already mentioned this, but just want to reiterate for some of our attendees here. You're able to, on Amazon, post or have your reviewers post reviews from receiving the ARC prior to publication date, correct? Or are they not able to show up until?
No, you have to at least have the Kindle page up, because if you have a pre-release for your book, you can't write reviews on a pre-release. It actually has to be published. So that's why the Kindle is important to get at least the Kindle edition live. And it doesn't even have to have your final cover. I mean, even the title can change, but it does need to be available for people to post reviews, yes.
Gotcha, but thank you for clarifying that. And gosh, I feel like we could continue for another hour here, but I know we're kind of coming towards the end of our time. And Brent, if you wouldn't mind, just to close out here, if you wouldn't mind sharing just a little bit more information of how people can follow up with you for your services. We've had a great deal of interest in kind of how to get connected with you and kind of what that process entails.
Sure.
If you wouldn't mind sharing a bit there.
Yeah, and just so you know, most of my clients are repeat customers or referrals. So that's how I get a little concerned when someone just finds me out of the blue on Google. But typically it's through referrals. So if in the perfect world, I would do referral only business. But the fact that people are on this presentation and got to learn a little bit about me and were willing to put in the hour to listen more, I'm always happy to chat with them. I give a 15-minute consultation by phone. No obligations, just to see if what I offer is a good fit for what you're looking for. I offer everything from start to finish. I didn't want to like dilute what I do, but I can help you with sort of every aspect of publishing. I have a whole bunch of clients who just have me on retainer that they come back to me whenever they have questions and need things. And that's sort of the bulk of my business. But there's a lot of information on my website, and there's a tips link that I didn't get to go into some of the specifics around, the free shipping thing, something, I have a whole write-up about the ARC, but if you jump over to selfpublish.org, I've got some good advice articles on the tips link, but my contact information is right there, Emily. And
yes, and we'll also include that in the follow-up email that everyone will receive. So they'll all have the link to your website as well as your email address there to follow up also.
Perfect. Yeah, and like I said, I'm happy to help guide you as best I can. Again, the Q&A stuff I'd be happy to do to a certain extent. At some point, I'm going to say, well, you probably need an hour consultation, so let's talk about that.
Definitely. Well, gosh, I just want to say, Brent, thank you so much for your presentation today. That was incredibly helpful.
My pleasure.
For all of our attendees, thank you so much for joining us. That follow-up email with the recording of today's session, as well as Brian's contact information, will all be included in that email, which will be sent out shortly. But otherwise, Brian, thank you so much again. Thank you to all of our attendees, and we hope to see everyone on our session next month as well.
Thanks, Emily.
Take care.
See ya.